Good morning and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see, today's video I'm taking a look at the player's book. So this is a preview for Swords and Wizardry, episode 2 overall for the videos that I'm going to do for this recent box set that I just purchased. It was a Kickstarter. I got the collector's edition, and so I'm going to go through each of the mini booklets, and then more importantly, I think the PDFs, because the PDFs that came along with this set are actually, really pretty cool. Much more than just the generic um, rule books that are in here. And I'll make a point about that generic aspect of it because I recently got into a one-way conversation. Like I responded to something, someone else's comment, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them. But I really did agree with them in the sense that one of the problems with the OSR is that there are so many different versions of D&D BX that it's starting to become a glut and is starting to make us question as consumers, just how many different versions of BX do I actually need? And so the reason why I picked up this was because I don't have a box set that's really built around OD&D and going back to the true original versions of it, and so that's why I jumped on this Kickstarter. Plus, it was not super expensive either, so I was like, all right, you know what, it's $80 or whatever, and that was certainly within my price range of doing it. So certainly glad that I purchased this particular one, and it probably is going to be um, one of my last OSR D&D BX clone purchases that I make, because I do have enough versions of it, and anything new coming out would have to be really much different than what I'm seeing here. The other argument that the individual made is that a lot of these versions that are coming out are simply homebrews. And so, again, that's another legitimate argument. But if you don't have a set like this, then I'd certainly point to this one and say, listen, for the price and what you're getting, then certainly jump on it. So, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into taking a look at the player book. So, here we have the player book. Actually, I wasn't on the front cover. So, here we have the player book, and it is 62 pages long, so fairly short. Has your basic opening up where it's introducing, getting started, the dice, common terms found in. So certainly a primer for anyone who has never played a role-playing game before. And then it goes into creating characters, and you have your 6 stats, your 6 attributes that you see across the board in every D&D clone that has ever existed. Then you have choosing your character class. So you do have assassins, which is, a new. It's not quite old school. So assassins started making their appearance, I believe, in AD&D First Edition. Although I'd have to double check that and see. You have your clerics. You had your druids. Druids were in Beckby, but you didn't become a druid until you hit a certain level. Um, same thing with paladins. So you could become a paladin as a fighter once you hit a certain level. Magic users could become, I believe it's mystics or some, or possibly illusionists at a higher level, but they don't do that here. They do have monks in here, paladins, as I said, a class onto their own. Rangers are introduced here very early on, so you can be a first level ranger. You don't have to be something first and then become, and you have thieves. You have dual classing. You have character races that are not classes, so that's a difference from old school D&D as well. You have multi-classing and the rules for multi-classing. You have the 3 alignment system, so you have lawful, chaos, and neutral, which I'm starting to become more and more satisfied with. You know, moving on, your various attack tables. And some specific situations for attacks. Some of them optional, others are required. But as always, everything is optional. It's up to your your DM and your table, your decided table rules. Unarmed combat system, turning undead, damage and death, healing and morale, and so on. Gameplay examples, which is always nice, so you can read through gameplay example. The artwork is very good. I'm always satisfied, or at least so far I have been. Knock on wood. Always been satisfied with OSR art. So they, in general, they've been very good at producing good art for their products. And that's not just Frog God Games. That's a lot of developers out there tend to be putting the money into art as well, which is nice to see. So so here you have the character sheet, and what I like about the character sheet is that it's one character sheet for all classes, and you just fill in the components that you need to. Roll needed to hit armor class, and you're just this is for your modifier. So you would put, like, if you're a fighter of a certain level, you might have a +4 modifier. And then if you know the armor class, let's say something has an armor class of 15, which is fairly high, then I need to roll a d20 +4 and hit or exceed a 15 in order to hit the target I'm looking for. So this you're going to change as your character goes up in level, or you might just have one of these printed out sheets for every level of your character. So as you go up, you just replace and add a new sheet. I would more likely do that. That way I kind of I can see what my character was in previous levels, and it certainly comes up great if if you have level train. So you can see, well, where was my character at? He just lost 2 levels. Hopefully I can remember what level, what he had as of, hit points and stats and such 2 levels ago. So creating a character, so you're rolling 3d6, all right, and you're rolling them in order. However, it suggests here that if this is going to be a long campaign for the character, the DM may decide to let you place them so that you're playing the class that you really want to, but that still doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to hit all the prerequisite for those other classes, and I'll get into that when I get there. So you have your blocks for strength and what the bonuses for strength are, and dexterity, constitution, intelligence. One thing I'm curious for, and certainly something I'm considering doing in my own games, is instead of intelligence, or possibly even in addition to intelligence, adding additional languages. I'd like to see a stat modifier for intelligence as well, And that way it would say, well, you know what, if you have a 16, you're going to get a +1 to the damage that your spells do. Maybe you'll have an additional +1 to saving throws based on intelligence. Um, 17 can be a +2. 18 can be a +2 or a +3 if you wanted to do that. So just something that allows for intelligence to impact um, combat or saving throws or the like. Um, and same thing with wisdom. Wisdom should give you pluses to saving throws based on having high wisdom scores. That's just something that I'm, was thinking about as I was flipping through this, and it was a wondering how come they usually don't apply that. So, prime attributes for an assassin, and I was kind of getting to that. There's a chart later on that actually lays it out better here. So, dexterity, strength, and intelligence, all plus 13 plus, will give you a 5% experience bonus. And there's no cap on that. So, if you have all three, you're going to get a 15% increase for a 13 plus. Old school D&D, or they capped it at 10% overall. And hit dice, and they go up quite high in this version as well. You can see their advancement tables go up to level 21 plus. So that's a difference between this version and old school D&D or basic or even BECME, where it was sectioned out. You had to go through basic, then expert, then companion in order to get to 20 plus. The thieves skills here for assassins. Again, there's certain elements of this that I wouldn't normally include for assassins. I think they should have slightly different skills than thieves. Your clerics, your cleric advancement table, obviously with their spells. Druids, which is a separate class, so different than OD&D, different than BECME or basic. I believe a cleric in BECME, and I'll have to double check. At level 9, a cleric could become a druid. Druid advancement table. Fighters, and at level 9, a fighter in BECME could become a paladin as long as they were lawful. But here they made them separate classes. Magic users could become mystics, if I recall correctly. Here you have a monk, so that's an introduction. You didn't have monks back in back in OD&D. Monks, I think, were introduced in Beyond. I think I'm fairly sure. Monks were introduced in AD&D First Edition, but they didn't quite fit the Greyhawk setting and just the overall tone of AD&D First Edition is really a medieval Europe kind of game system, and the monk really doesn't fit that setting. And so here, a European monk, and I just had this conversation with somebody else online as well. A European monk is really more of a scholarly priest or a scribe rather than a monk like an Oriental Adventures monk, which is what Gary Gygax actually suggested when Oriental Adventures came out. He basically said you should swap the monk that's in the player's handbook with the monk that is in Oriental Adventures, basically scrubbing the European monk class. And again, monks should not have certain types of these thieves skills. It just doesn't make sense. Why would a monk be able to open locks as a skill? Or I could see some of these other agility based things, or moving silently but hiding in shadows. I mean, unless the monk had a subclass of ninja, then I would alter some of these. You have paladins, rangers, thieves. With thieves, I really like. Frank Mentzer wrote a modification for thieves for Beckme, where it changed some of their class skills. It combined a few, and then it created appraisal and networking, and it tied a thief more to being a functionary of a thieves guild, and giving them those abilities to appraise items, sell them off, and to network within the thieves guild. To have those criminal connections and such. And I just like the whole tone of it better. It made them a little bit more versatile as far as of having skills, and the skill system was based on a D20 system as well, so it was a little bit higher chances of actually doing some of these skills under that system. So I just thought it was a better system than that. So I'm kind of surprised that more modern OSR lookbacks like this doesn't adopt that kind of a thing. So. But that's what homebrews are for. Non-human thief bonuses. So here we get to changing character classes and dual classing, and why would I play a fighter or a cleric character? So, and the reason why you would play potentially the four core character classes of fighter, thief, magic user, and cleric is that the attributes requirements for these other classes are much higher. They usually require more of them to be a certain level. As you can see here, an assassin, to be an assassin, and if you're rolling in order, 3d6 in order, you would need to roll a 12 for strength, a 12 for dexterity, and a 12 for intelligence. For a druid, you need a 12 wisdom and a 14 charisma. For a monk, you would need a 12 strength, a 15 dexterity, and a 15 wisdom. For paladin, you need a 17 charisma. A ranger needs a 15 constitution, a 12 intelligence, and a 12 wisdom. The reason why this was done was to make these classes less common, or possibly even rare, in comparison to the fighter, the cleric, the magic user, and the thief. All right, so it was by design to create some rarity. Now, if you are letting the player assign where they put their attributes, their roles, then it's certainly possible for them to do this. But there might be some advantages to holding your players to playing the classes that they were just lucky enough to roll, or not lucky enough to roll. This might make a player decide, you know what, I actually rolled a 17 for charisma. I can actually play a paladin, even though I wasn't considering playing a paladin. Now I can. And it encourages players to go a different route than what they might have been planning on. And so broaden their experience of playing different classes that they might not have originally intended, but now that I qualify for it, I might actually do it. So that's an advantage to having that limitation um, included. So here, your demi-humans are not classes onto themselves. Multi-classing. The one thing I'm upset about is that halflings cannot multi-class. I always like playing a halfling fighter thief. So I play systems that allow for that. Level advancement, choosing alignment. Remember the three alignments in this system. Section on buying equipment and armor, weights and movement. So everything you kind of need, and then a whole section on how to play the game. And they give you your saving throws, categories, and alternative method of saving throws, combat, alternative combat sequence, method 3, modified, supplement 3 rules. I have not dug into any of this at all, so I am just looking through it for the first time as well. Maybe I will do a separate video on just doing various combat resolutions and such and demonstrating how the game actually plays. So you have your attack tables. Attack roll, d20 required to hit opponent's armor class. So you have the target armor class is here. Armor class for ascending armor class. Is in parentheses. So an AC of 1, not -1, or actually let's say an AC of 0 is the equivalent, so that's in descending armor class, is the equivalent of a 19. All right, and in order to hit a 19, a first to second level cleric, druid, monk, or monk needs a 19 in order to hit an AC of 19, or in descending armor class, an AC of 0. So this would be their THAC0. To hit armor class 0 is a 19. And in ascending, it's still a 19. They just kind of flip the number. Now they talk about using a formula later on so that you don't have to use the combat charts. I prefer to use combat charts. All right. I'd rather hand one of these out to a player, and then, I know the armor class so that I don't have to tell the player the armor class that they're hitting, because they really shouldn't know what the armor class is of a target. They may infer when they roll their die and I tell them that they hit, then they'll kind of have a general idea, or at least they'll start to figure it out. But, there's an immersion breaking point when I'm saying, all right, you're trying to hit AC 5. Roll your die. Here's the monster attack table. And we go through. We have the turning the undead. Alternative quick method of calculating hits with it. I'd rather just use it. This is so that you don't have to use the chart. I prefer to use the chart because, to be honest with you, this is kind of confusing to me. Like the class level cleric gets a +1 at 3. In order to use this, you have to tell them what the armor class is that they're trying to hit. I'd rather just give them a chart. I'm aware of what the armor class is, and then I tell them if they hit or not. And like I said, eventually after a few strikes, they'll eventually infer, what that armor class is, if they have the chart in front of them. high level adventuring. And so we are basically done with it. So as you can see, it's a there's some tweaks to old school rules. Does go all the way up to level 21 for all of the classes. A few little modifications here and there. Still a reliance on the 6 attributes. So that makes it clearly an OSR game. Also the rolling 3d6 in order still supported by this, and I think that it's a fun way, especially with new players, to kind of introduce them to some of the older way of playing, and it just changes the way that they look at the game. They look at role playing. They look at well, I might not have played this character class, hadn't rolled that 17 in charisma. So now I'm going to take that opportunity to play a paladin because I've done that, or, well, you know what, all this time I was really looking to play an assassin, but I didn't get those rolls. So now I have to play another character class that either I might not have expected that I would play, and so it might be again another new opportunity, or I'm gonna have to play a fighter, so I'm just gonna make the best of it, and there's some benefit to that as well. So using attributes in order has both advantages and disadvantages, obviously. But I think that there's probably more advantages as far as creating new opportunities for players to explore character classes that they might not normally have tried to do. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments about this, please feel free to leave a question or comment in the comment section. If you would disagreed with anything that I said, or if I misstated anything, and you're much more familiar with the rules than I am, please feel free to put that in there as well. And then I'll take a look at it and we can have a discussion about it. And once again, if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I will follow this up in a couple of days, probably more quickly than usual. So probably within about 2 days, I will start taking a look at the Game Master book for this, and then later on after that, I certainly want to get into some of the PDFs that came along with this Kickstarter, because I think that those are in many cases pretty cool to take a look at. So again, thanks for joining. Have a great day. Be safe out there, and I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Take care.